All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about something that feels like it's pulled straight from science fiction, but it is very, very real: gene therapy. This is a field that truly promises to rewrite the entire story for diseases we once thought were completely untreatable. But before we can pull back the curtain on the incredible science of how these therapies are actually made, we've got to get on the same page. What exactly is gene therapy? And honestly, why does it matter so much?
Well, at its heart, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. Think about it. Instead of just managing symptoms with pills, we're going right to the source code, to your DNA, and literally fixing the typo. You can swap out a faulty gene, you can switch off a gene that's causing all the trouble, or you can even introduce a brand new gene to get the job done right.
And look, the stakes here are absolutely monumental. We're not just talking about making things a little bit better. We are talking about conditions, genetic disorders, rare diseases, even some cancers that for the longest time were considered a life sentence. This technology offers the potential to cure the incurable. It's a total game changer.
Okay, so that sounds amazing, but how do you actually do that? How do you get that genetic fix where it needs to go? Well, there are basically two main approaches. First, you've got in vivo therapy, which just means inside the body. Think of it like a specialized injection, delivering the genetic material right to the target. The other way is ex vivo, or outside the body. This is more like a pit stop. We take some cells out of a patient, give them a high-tech upgrade in the lab, and then infuse them back in, supercharged and ready to work. All right, so we've got the what and the why covered. Now for the really cool part, the how. We're going to go on a little microscopic factory tour to see how one of the most common types of gene therapy, one that uses a little delivery vehicle called an AAV vector, actually gets made. On paper, it almost looks like a simple 5-step assembly line. First step, cell expansion. You start with a small batch of cells, maybe 10 million, and you grow them for about 3 weeks until you have something like 10 billion. Then comes the magic step, transfection. You introduce genetic blueprints that tell these cells, okay, time to become tiny little therapy factories. After that, it's the harvest. You literally break the cells open to release all the good stuff inside. Step 4 is purification. And this is absolutely critical. It's quality control, filtering out all the junk, and separating the therapies that are ready to go from the duds. And finally, fill and finish, where that precious final product gets put into vials and prepped for a patient. So, 5 steps. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Grow, program, harvest, clean, bottle. Well, not so fast. That simple-looking process is hiding a world of mind-boggling complexity. And that complexity has created a massive, industry-wide problem, the great manufacturing bottleneck. And that really gets us to the heart of the matter. If we have the recipe, if we know the steps, why on earth are these therapies so incredibly difficult and so astronomically expensive to actually produce for the people who desperately need them? Well, when you start digging into that bottleneck, the challenges really fall into 3 big buckets. First, the technical hurdles are just immense. I mean, going from making a small batch in a lab to making enough for thousands of patients is a gigantic leap. Then you have the regulatory maze. These are living drugs, so the rules are super strict, always changing. It's a compliance nightmare. And finally, the cost. Yeah, specialized facilities, expensive materials, highly skilled scientists, it all adds up really, really fast. And to put the inefficiency into perspective, get this. One analysis suggested that for gene therapy to become a mainstream treatment, its production process needs to become at least 1,000 times more efficient than making other advanced drugs. No, that is not a typo. 1,000 times. It's just a staggering number. And to really understand one of the biggest technical headaches, let's go back to our AAV delivery vehicle. Think of its outer shell, the capsid, as a tiny delivery truck. The problem is, during production, the cell factory makes a ton of empty trucks, no therapeutic package inside. And trying to separate the full, medicine-carrying trucks from the millions of empty ones, it is one of the single most difficult and critical steps in the whole process. And honestly, the list of hurdles just goes on and on. So many steps are still done by hand, which is almost impossible to scale up. The cells are living things, so no 2 batches are ever perfectly identical. Some of the delivery vehicles are incredibly fragile. And maybe the toughest part is the time. That vein-to-vein clock, from when you collect a patient's cells to when they get the infusion, can tick on for weeks. That's time a lot of very sick people just don't have. Okay, that sounds pretty bleak, I know. But here is the good news. It is not all doom and gloom.
For every single one of these massive challenges, there are brilliant people developing some truly incredible solutions to finally break this bottleneck wide open.
So what's in this toolkit for the future? For starters, a lot more automation and closed systems to cut down on human error. We're seeing single-use, disposable technologies that make everything way more flexible. And of course, AI and machine learning are jumping in, helping to optimize the whole process and even predict how a batch will turn out.
It's all part of this bigger movement people are calling Pharma 4.0. The idea is basically to create a smart factory. You integrate all these digital tools, AI, machine learning, real-time data, to make the entire manufacturing process more efficient, more predictable, and just plain better. And all of this points to a radical shift away from those giant centralized factories. The future might just be smaller, decentralized manufacturing hubs located much closer to hospitals and patients. This point-of-care approach could drastically cut down on logistics costs and that critical turnaround time. Which brings us to the final and most important question. The science is here. The technology to manufacture it for everyone is coming online. But will all this innovation be enough to finally make these potential miracle cures accessible and affordable for everyone who needs them, and not just the lucky few? That right there, that is the challenge and the incredible promise of our time.